Professor H here. I'm looking at this going, what in the world? Oh, I know, I'm building a clock. Silly me, I forget sometimes what I'm doing. Got too much in my head. Now, that's a good idea too, because I don't have my watch on today. So this clock will help. Now, who do you think first did clocks with water? Oh, I know. Many years ago, the ancient Egyptians and the Chinese both used different ways of measuring water to use it as a clock. Now, another way you can tell time, which we're not going to do right now, is you can look up in the sky. That's right. When God made the heavens and the earth, he set everything in motion. And the timing of everything is so perfect that we can actually tell the time the closest to the most exact way using the stars. And that's what a lot of other people, in the old days, used to use. And we still use that today. There's a naval observatory that still watches the stars and helps keep the official time. They also use an atomic clock. But we're not talking physics today. So let's get back to the clock we're going to make. Now ours is not going to be quite as exact as that, but it'll be kind of fun to make. So what do you need? Well, if you've already looked at your supply list, but just in case you haven't, you need 2 containers that are basically the same size. Okay? They can be bigger than these, they can be a little smaller, maybe not much smaller, but just 2 containers that are the same size. Then you need something that's going to act as your support. Now I've got a plastic paint stick here. You could use a wooden paint stick. You could use a ruler as long as it's pretty sturdy. I had a plastic ruler, but it's too thin. Can't use that. Then I need some sort of marker. Now I've got a permanent marker. You do need something that's not going to wash off in water because it's going to get wet. And a Sharpie works good, or like this, a little permanent marker works good. You're going to need tape. Now you don't need Scotch tape because that's not strong enough. I've got nice packing tape here. Duct tape works real well, as well as black insulation tape. So if your mom or dad has a toolbox around, they probably got one of those 3 tapes in it. Of course, always ask mom and dad before you do the experiment. You know the rules. You can't just go digging around and stuff and do an experiment. Oh, and we need our friend water, which remember, he's everywhere. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark some markings inside one of the cups. Now what this is going to tell us is as the water level changes, we'll be able to time how long it takes. So they don't have to be exact. I'm just going to put some marks here. Now, if you really wanted to get your clock exact, you would want to measure these marks and then measure the hole in the bottom, and you could really make a pretty exact clock with a little bit of practice. But for now, I just want you to see that we're just going to make a really simple clock here. All right, so we've got our markings. Now we have to attach one of our little clock pieces to the base. So I'm going to take my tape gun and take a little piece of tape off of it. So noisy. Okay, and now you can use tape however you want, but what you're going to do is attach it to your little base. Well, it's a little tricky here, but what you're going to do, not to the table, that won't make a very good clock. You want to just attach it to the back so that it can kind of stand up, like so. Okay, and you may have to hold it, depending on what kind of container you use. It may be a little swashy. All right, and then you're going to take this container and you're going to put it above that. But before you do, we got to do something important to this container. We got to get water from this container into this container. And we're not going to be able to do that once we tape it. So before you tape it, take something real simple. I've got a thumbtack here. You might not can see it. I'll kind of hold it out there. Maybe you can see it. I don't know. But you're going to take your little thumbtack and your little container, and you're just going to poke a hole in the bottom. Now I recommend, unless you want to be here a really long time, you make that hole kind of big. Not huge. Maybe like 3 pokes. That way, you got a nice, and just kind of wall the hole out a little bit. So you got a nice little groove hole there, okay? And we may have to come back and make that a little bigger. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and make it a little bigger now. Because I've done this a couple times. You do need a little bit of a hole. There we go, I think that'll work. If I measured it, it's probably about I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters, something like that. So not very big, okay? So now we're going to take some water and we're going to pour it in our first little cup here. You just want to pour it up to one of your lines, but not past your line. And I've got mine at the second line. Now it'll stay nice. And then I'm going to take a little bit more tape, because we've got to attach the other end of our clock. A little bit more. More tape to back. Oh. Don't worry, no one was hurt in the making of this film. Okay. We're going to put the tape around our little cup. Never knew you could use yogurt cups in so many ways, did you? We're going to put it over it and make sure that the hole of your cup lines over the hole of your bottom cup. If not, you're going to have a mess. It might be a good idea too to have some paper towels handy, something like that. I've got some paper towels on the edge of my table. You probably can't see them, just in case I start to make a mess. And of course, as always, make sure you talk to mom or dad and make sure they're cool with you doing this little experiment. Because right there, I spilled a little water. Okay, put my little paper towel up. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to put your finger underneath your cup and you're going to cover the hole. Because when I pour the water, it's going to start pouring into the other cup and I'm not ready for it yet. You don't have to fill it up, but get a good amount in there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pause for just a second. Okay, so here we're back. Now, I did actually get a watch because part of the experiment is you actually have to time how fast the water comes out. So what you're going to do is when I take my finger off this little hole, the water's going to start coming out. And what you want to do is you want to look inside your little cup and you want to measure how long it takes for the water level to go from one mark to the next mark. And once you know that, you can then use your water for a clock. So I'm going to start dropping mine out, and it's going pretty fast. And it's going, and it's going, and it's going, and it's going, and it's there. So I stop it. Okay, and by my watch, it took it about 8 seconds. So I know to go from one mark to the next mark took 8 seconds. So if I had a bigger container on the bottom, like say maybe very tall, and I had it demarked in little increments of say 10 seconds, what I could do is I could fill the top one and I could start it running, and when it filled up 6 blocks that took 10 seconds each, if you do the math, 6 times 10, 60, you'd have a minute. And then if it was even taller, you could do an hour after 60 of those. And that's what the old clocks did, was they had long containers, or they used circles so that they could circle around, and they were able to measure the time. But for our purposes, we just measured 8 seconds every time we went from one mark to the next. So when you make yours, like I said, if you want to make sure you're more exact, measure your markings. They can be ½ inch, centimeters, meters. It doesn't matter. Well, not meters, but millimeters. Just make sure that they're all the same and have a stopwatch handy. And then you, too, can make a clock that runs on water.